God's got a blessing with my name on it. Amen. Can we all say that? God's got a blessing with my name. And just imagine for a moment your name being on it eternally. That blessing is yours eternally. You know, we started the year and we will end the year affirming something that is absolutely so powerful. And that is the eternal affirmation of truth and empowerment of right where I am, God is. Imagine, we started the year saying that, and we will end the year affirming the exact same thing. But let's end the year not only saying it, but knowing that that is, in fact, the truth. That God is right where we are all the time. Makes no difference. Today, tomorrow, and forever. You know, it's the writer in 1 John who said, "And the world passeth away, and the lust thereof, but he that doeth the will of God abideth forever." Once again, abideth forever, eternally. Something about this relationship with the divine. And then when we go to the Quran, the writer there says, "And all that is with you passeth away, but that which is with God abideth." Imagine, eternally. You know, each time we write a letter, we end the letter saying something similar, like, "Sincerely yours," or "Yours truly," or "Kind regards," and all of those wonderful things. But imagine a letter coming to us from the divine, a word of God coming to each of us, and at the conclusion of that word, something says, "Eternally yours." If you all would just for a moment, just close your eyes where you're sitting and relax and listen to the word that I'm going to share with you, and I invite you to receive this word into your consciousness as I speak them. In each I invite you to personalize that I. I know that I live in a changeless reality. I am not disturbed by the passage of time, the movement around me, nor the variations of experiences which I go. But something within me remains immovable and says, "Be still and know that I am God." This I am, which is God within me, is substantial. It is changeless, and it is perfect. This is my truth eternally. I am grateful for that, and so it is. Imagine, although we live in a changeless reality, there's constant movement all around us. But the thing that is so constant, regardless of all that is taking place, that is that God continues to be right where we are. Ernest Holmes writes in his book, Ideas of Power, he says this. He says, "There is flowing into each one of us, in my estimation, a unique presentation of the universe itself. And every man is a center in a consciousness which is itself universal or cosmic, and all-encompassing, endless, forever expansiveness." Imagine that. There is flowing into each one of us, regardless of what we call ourselves, regardless of how we classify our stations in life, regardless of all of our wishes and our wants. There is this unique presentation of the universe itself. This idea of God finding us as the center of its own expression. Imagine that. And we began the year through that acknowledgement, and we take out this year in that same place. That this constant flow is still in motion, regardless of circumstance, regardless of situation, and regardless of all else that we see. Imagine for a moment that you are a center of God-conscious presence, power, and activity, and that you awakened into this presence at birth. And as you evolve, you will transition into this even more so, and therefore the most powerful thing that you'll ever say, and that is, once again, that right where you are, God is. You know, regardless of the circumstance, I found regardless of the situation, regardless of the difficulty, regardless of what may have been going on to my liking or not, that has always been the most powerful thing that I've been able to say. You know, I was watching television the other day and I saw they were pulling a man out of a truck, and his truck had gone over an embankment, and I guess it had been there for a few weeks. And all of a sudden there were some guys who were passing by and they discovered him. Just walking, they were going fishing or something, and they walked by and they thought what they saw was just some mangled wreckage on the side of the road. And it turned out that inside of that mangled truck there was someone there who was still alive. And as I watched that and I listened to this man show his appreciation for these individuals who discovered him, I was thinking to myself, imagine being in that situation, or imagine being in a situation similar to that. And one would ask themselves, what would I do if I found myself in that difficulty? And what else could we do other than to recognize? But there is a presence and the power that is able to reach even down into that moment and to pull us to safety. But see, that's the safety net that we have. And that's the understanding that has been imparted to each of us each time we've entered into this space. To come into this conscious realization and recognition that all the power that there is and all the glory that there is and all that we could ever conceive God to be is right where we are, always, all the time, awaiting our conscious recognition. Imagine that. God is waiting on us. And oftentimes we'd like to think that we're the ones waiting on God. The psalmist says it this way. He says, "Whither shall I go from thy spirit? Or whither shall I flee from thy presence? If I ascend up into the heavens, thou art there. If I make my bed in hell, behold, thou art there. If I take the wings of the morning and dwell in the uttermost parts of the sea, even there shall thy hand lead me, and thy right hand shall hold me." Makes no difference where I go. When I'm experiencing the highest place in consciousness, the highest of heights that I'm able to conceive and conceptualize for myself, even in that place, I find you. And when I'm at the lowest of lows, in the most difficult of circumstance, if I look beyond the appearance, even there, I will find you. So it makes no difference how high I may be or how low I might be. I will always find you there, because I realize that each of those experiences are of my own making, because it is your power that is flowing through me. Someone should say that I am grateful, because there is no place that God is not present. You know that? Eternally yours. When that inspiration came to Reverend Lisa, that inspiration came meaning something. You know, this idea could be one of the very reasons so many of the ancient writers have wrote that God is a very present help. Makes no difference to the circumstance. God is a very present help. You know, as we reflect upon our own mortality, we understand that God is here. And likewise, when the day comes when we step over into our own immortality, likewise, God will still be there. This I am, which we are, is eternal. And it's a simple word, but it's a word filled with great meaning and great impact. It was the Apostle Paul in his writings to the Galatians where he wrote, "If we live by the Spirit, let us also then be guided by the Spirit." You know, it's one thing for us to say that God is eternally ours. It's another thing for us to say that right where I am, God is, but it has the greatest impact when we understand what it is that we are saying. And that this is not just some word that we decide that we're going to say today because we're here in this moment, but it represents something that we absolutely believe and something we absolutely hold sacred and something that we absolutely allow our lives to be led by. You know, so often when we come to a moment like this, part of this worship experience is meditation. And you know, in meditation, it's the time that we quiet ourselves because we need to get quiet so that we can hear what is speaking through us, what is speaking to us, what is guiding and directing us. And see, we can't hear that when we're doing so much talking. We can't hear that or receive that when we are so busy. And sometimes the realization has to enter into us that we need to quiet ourselves more than just on Sunday morning. You know, when we come to church, that's a quiet time for us. But what about the other 6 days? And those times where we continue to need to hear Spirit speak to us. You know, we start the year out and we're setting all kinds of goals for ourselves and things that we want to accomplish. But see, those of us that are spiritual realize that accomplishing that is not something that we do alone. Because there is an accompaniment that is always there with us. And that is this presence and this power that, as the psalmists say, we can never escape from. So since we understand, and I trust that we understand that God is everywhere present, no matter where we are, no matter what it is that we might be doing, that we calm ourselves and we quiet ourselves to listen to the guidance of Spirit. You know, even as I'm speaking to you, there's something else that is speaking into your consciousness. Something that's given a word that you have been waiting. Something that is providing a direction that you've been seeking. But it needs your attention in order for it to feed that understanding into your consciousness. And the moment that you quiet yourself and even say something like, "Speak to me in this moment." And it's saying that, believing that some word of inspiration is going to come to you in a way in which you can understand it, you can accept it, and you can believe it. And when all of that merges together, it leads you to your highest and your best. Imagine for a moment that we step into our future, and we do so with the presence and the power and the love of the Spirit. Reflect back on this year, 2023. And as we look back on the year and do it from our own individual as well as collective experiences, there are many events and many experiences that we went through during this year. There were many moments of visionings that we went through during this year. There were many sad moments, many happy moments. But we experienced all of those moments with God. You know, as we look around the sanctuary, just think back for a moment. There were many who started out the year with us. And as we come to the conclusion of the year, they've crossed over. Be they a loved one, be they a child, be they a significant other, be they a neighbor, be they a coworker, whatever, someone that was close as a part of your circle. And in that transition, you were saddened by it. But you overcame that sadness when you had a greater realization that the presence of God was right there where you were, and it was moving you from that place to a greater place. And the moment that we embraced that, we found ourselves moving. We were no longer stuck, locked in place, grieving endlessly. Something empowered us to step out of that moment and into a better moment. And what was that other than that word revisiting us that right where I am, God is. And that presence lifting you up and pulling you up. There may have been moments of failures or seeming failures. Things didn't go quite the way we wanted them to go. Disappointment may have seeped in. It didn't achieve exactly what it was striving to achieve in the year. And we were saddened by that once again and forlorn and also a bit disappointed. But we didn't stay there because once again something came through. That word that was spoken at the beginning of the year, right where I am, God is, and it lifted you up out of that place of disappointment. It had you to understand that there's promise, there's greater promise ahead of you. Someone may have been involved in an accident during the year. Body hurt, broken. And all of a sudden you're in all of this pain. And it seems as though the pain was endless, but at some point, even it dissipated. It went away. And once again, a word that started out at the beginning of the year, right where I am, God is. It lifted you from that place of pain and placed you in a place of healing. Then there were all the happy times. Birthday, parties, weddings, anniversaries, graduations, babies, all of that stuff. Those happy moments. But even in those happy times, we invited into those moments, once again, the presence, the power, and the love of Spirit, because once again, we heard that word that we spoke from the very beginning. Right where I am, God is. Let me ask you this question. Do you believe you have the power to reimagine your life? To find greater purpose and to pursue greater happiness? Imagine it. You believe you have the power to reimagine your life. Now, when you look at where you are right now and the circumstance that you find yourself in, all of this is the result of your imagination or the lack thereof. But imagination is a divine gift that's been given to us. Some of us consciously use it, and we use it to our betterment. We use it because we want to progress in this experience that we call our lives. We use it because we want to expand, we want to grow, because we understand that this is the first law of the universe, and we want to be in accordance with that law. So we use our imagination. We quiet ourselves, we still ourselves, and then we visualize ourselves. And in that vision, we see ourselves being happy. We see ourselves being glad. We see ourselves being well. We see ourselves progressing in life. We see ourselves achieving the goals that we have set for ourselves. And as we see these things, one paused and they asked themselves, do I believe that possible? See, those that are possibility thinkers empower that vision and allow it to move from an abstract idea in one's mind to a living reality that is a part of their experience. Those are believers. And then there is that group that they fall somewhere between maybe not believing and believing. They just the group that pay it no attention. You know, you see a vision, you have a vision, but then you don't think that that vision is possible. So the negative energy that you give that vision causes it to collapse. And then you come back and you create the same vision again and again and again and again. Imagine that. But what for a moment if we could just reimagine it all? You know, think of it like a farmer going out to plant some corn. He puts a corn seed into the ground. Something happens in that ground. There is something creative that receives that seed and causes that seed to explode with the idea that it contained. The idea in that seed was a cornstalk. And if you plant enough seeds, the idea is a cornfield. Now, the farmer, after planting that, if he runs back out the next day and take a look and don't see something happening, he can get disappointed and say it ain't working. And then he goes away and comes back again looking for it, and it's still nothing happening. But imagine the one that after he plants it just allows it to do its thing. Realize that the only help that it needs from me is the nourishing that I give it. And that's the water and allowing it to receive sunlight. And then allow the creative soil being directed by its spirit to do what it does best, and that is to pull that idea out of that seed and allow it to grow. Now imagine the ideas within your own mind are just like that corn seed. And you have the opportunity to plant it in the creative mind of spirit. And after placing it there, the next day you say, well, it didn't happen. A week later, well, it didn't happen. As opposed to placing it there and allow God to do what God does best. See, when you believe that spirit knows how to do it, knows when to do it, and how to bring it about, then what you do is you leave it to God to handle its business. That's right. Yours was to release the idea. Now imagine, we went through this whole year with a whole lot of ideas. We went through this whole year with a whole lot of visioning. Went through this whole year with a whole lot of prayers and affirmations and, you know, saying things that maybe we believed or didn't believe. I don't know. But for those that believed the words that they spoke, those that understood the relationship that they have with spirit, those that were in anticipation and in expecting something to happen as a result of that action, those are the ones that shall indeed receive the reward of their efforts. See, spirit is forever unfolding its own nature in us. And it does its renewing activity through our thinking. God uses you. You know, for a lot of us, we came up from a fundamentalist place and we confuse religion and magic. And it's not your fault. It's not your fault. But at some point we evolve, and that is your fault. Evolution is something that you control. Your own evolution, how you evolve, that is something within your control. The things that you begin to hold true, that is within your control. It's like Jesus saying to the man one day, take up your bed and walk. And he didn't believe him at first. He said, you know, every year when the angel comes and troubles the water, I try to get in, but there are those that get in before me. Somebody else is helping them, and there's nobody to help me. And since there's no one to help me, I can't get in there and get my healing. Well, Jesus didn't deal with any of that. He said, just take up your bed and walk. In other words, the ability is within you. You don't need someone else that's on the outside of you. What you need to do is to rely on that which you have. And that's what we have to do as we go into this new year, to rely on that which we have. And that which we have is saying to us, I'm eternally yours. I'm eternally yours. Right where you are, I am. And all I ask is that you be conscious of that. Because see, when you are conscious of me being right where you are, then you will rely upon me. That's why the scriptures wrote, God has not given us the spirit of fear, but of power and of sound mind. And at some point within our experience, we need to call upon that spirit and allow it to change our circumstance. I want you to take another moment. I want you to affirm this with me, and this time I want you to say it aloud. You don't have to do it in the silence of yourself. So just repeat it after me. It is my Father's good pleasure to give me the kingdom. It is my Father's good pleasure to give me the kingdom. Today I accept this kingdom. Today I accept this kingdom. And I accept it in its fullness. And I accept it in its fullness. The day contains joy. The day contains joy. Happiness. Happiness. And divine power. And divine power. This silent power. This silent power. Filled with spiritual wisdom. Filled with spiritual wisdom. And love. And love. Governs my thoughts. Governs my thoughts. Decisions. Decisions. And acceptances. And acceptances. I believe it. I believe it. I give thanks. I give thanks. And so it is. And so it is. Just pause for a moment and just process what you just affirmed and understand it is God's good pleasure to give unto each of us the kingdom without reservation, without concern of who you are, without consideration of what your past might have been, without any recognition of where you've achieved your education or any of all that. God has no concern about any of that at all. Not concerned about how old you are. Only concerned about blessing you, giving you the kingdom. But the important part is your willingness to accept. That's why the ancients said, first seek ye the kingdom of God and all of its righteousness. Then everything else will be added unto you. Not that you have to worry, not that you have to beg, not that you have to borrow, not that you have to negotiate. You know, I can remember once upon a time in my life that I didn't feel like I was communicating with God unless I was on my knees. It's like he didn't hear me unless I was on my knees. And then if something didn't happen quickly after being on my knees, then I felt that I needed to fast. Because if I fast, then, you know, they said that God was going to hear me better. So I would fast. And do all these things that someone else was telling me to do, rather than to listen to what Spirit was guiding me to do. And as I evolved, then I realized that this communication with Spirit is going on endlessly. While I'm walking, while I am talking, while I'm pushing a cart in the supermarket, while I am on the computer, There is a communication that is going on with spirit. And that is, I'm opening up the channels for blessings just to flow and positioning myself to receive. Why? Because I believe that right where I am, God is. And that it's his good pleasure to give me. See, I was thinking I had to do all these other things in order to be blessed. And what was I doing other than putting a barrier up to a blessing rather than opening the floodgates to receive? Understand, there is this universal intelligence, God, that brings about all that is. It is the cause of all creation. And yet, it is also the space in which creation exists. Imagine that. It is the universal essence of all that has ever been and ever will be. But here's the good thing, is that this universal stuff operates through each of us by means of our imagination and our willingness to be connected. Eternally yours. Imagine, God said, I'm eternally yours. I think Paul understood that when he wrote to the Philippians. He said, listen, let this mind be in you that was also in Christ Jesus, who being in the form of God, thought it not robbery to be equal with God. Imagine that kind of consciousness. Imagine that kind of thinking. Imagine that kind of mind. Imagine that kind of connection with power. Let that same mind be in you, which implies that there is the possibility, there is the ability for that mind, that consciousness, that understanding to be yours. But see, we have to allow that to happen. We have to open ourselves up to that. You know, we're now at the end of this year, getting ready to enter into the next, and all these are just measurements of time. And these can be useful for us because they give us an opportunity to measure ourselves. And as we look back upon this last year, and many of the things that we did or did not do, it's time to just let it all go, because the year has come to a conclusion. But here's the good thing. We're now at the moment to begin a brand new chapter for ourselves. To let the old go and to allow ourselves by faith to step out into something new, realizing that the same power and presence that we heard about all throughout this year is that same power and presence that will accompany us into the new one. And maybe we didn't rely upon it as much as we could have. Maybe we didn't commune with it as much as we would have liked to. And maybe we didn't receive the level of blessings that were intended for us. But regardless of it all, we're at a moment now where we just let it all go. And know that God has a blessing. Put your name on it. And as you enter into this new year, you have got to be determined to collect your blessing. Peace and blessings to you today.